start the State Government Finance Committee hearing. Members, we've got a full schedule, so I appreciate those of you that showed up on time so that we can start. We have in your packets today the minutes. Representative Anderson moves the minutes for March 25th. All those in favor of the March 25th minutes, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Because I am the only author here of a bill so far, I'm going to start with my bill. That is House File 1467. This is the Hennepin County Railroad issue. Members, for those of you that haven't heard this bill yet in other committees, what we are doing here is that we are making it so that it's clear in statute that Hennepin County has the authority to recognize public safety concerns when it comes to eminent domain proceedings dealing with the railroad. And so this makes it clear and puts it into statute for us. There is no fiscal note attached to this, no fiscal cost, I should say. I do have folks here that could testify to it if you wish, but we don't have to go that route if that's the desires of the committee. So with that, I am going to offer it up to anybody that wishes to testify for or against the bill, and then we'll go over questions. So if there's anyone from the public that wishes to testify to this bill, please come forward. Thank you, Mr. Sutter. Please state your name for the record and who you represent.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I am John Sutter. I'm the Acting Community Development Director for the City of Crystal. I do have some handouts for the committee, if there is a page available. Thank you. I know you've got a busy agenda, so I'll be brief in my comments. Mike,
welcome, Commissioner. If you want to state your name for the record as well, and who.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Mike Opat, Hennepin County Commissioner. Well, I think we're here today with the bill asking the committee to really validate the county's public safety role by allowing a clarifying provision in state law where when the county and government owns land that if the railroad wants that land, that the decision would be that the county's public interests are primary to those of the railroad. We have a situation, and Mr. Sutter can describe it, where unbeknownst to any local government, any of the cities that are involved in these cities are Plymouth to the west, beginning in the west, Plymouth, New Hope, Crystal, Minneapolis, or Crystal, Robbinsdale, Golden Valley, and Minneapolis. The Burlington Northern Railroad approached the Canadian Pacific Railroad, which carries long oil trains and other heavy freight trains west to east along their line that goes through those cities and actually goes through Plymouth, New Hope, Crystal, and Minneapolis into the BN yard in northeast Minneapolis. That's happened for as long as I can remember. I've represented this area for 20 years. I've lived in the area my entire life. That's a heavy freight rail line. Everybody understands that. We all deal with it. There are only 2 grade separations on that line. The rest are at grade, but we live with it. However, the plan that was revealed, actually discovered, not revealed, to the local governments was that Burlington Northern wanted those CP trains to be rerouted in Crystal, then travel south on a little-used Monticello subdivision of the BN line, go through, split downtown Robbinsdale, 1 train a day, maybe 5 to 7 cars, 1 or 2 trains at the most are run on that line now. That line doesn't go anywhere. It goes out to Monticello and stops at the river. There's maybe 1 or 2 customers on there. But anyway, these long trains, 4,000 or more feet, 100 or more cars, would then be diverted through downtown Robbinsdale, through Golden Valley, through Minneapolis parkland and wetlands down there, back up through downtown Minneapolis, under Target Field, across Nicollet Island, and then it would avoid the north yards, the northeast yards, Shoreham yards, Northtown yards are kind of called both, depending on who you talk to, before heading east. And our primary concern is, one, what those long trains would do in terms of blocking up to 5 at-grade intersections at the same time. Intersections where, or that line actually is adjacent to the Robbinsville Police Department and Fire Department sit on that line. It's in their backyard. If you stopped traffic at Rockford Road, a very busy county road, County Road 9, as well as West Broadway, Noble Avenue, 39th and a half Avenue, you would effectively cut off public safety first responders from getting either to the station to go out on a call or from the station to go to a call. So those are our primary concerns. The county acted upon learning of this plan to inquire with the railroads, did not get satisfactory answers as to the plan, was not apprised of what, and neither were any of the cities, of what was really going to happen here. And so we acted to purchase a property that would prevent this crossing. The county owns that property. It was an effort out of really a last resort kind of effort. We didn't have any other tools to try to get some sort of cooperative posture from the railroads, and we just didn't feel like we could stop it or have a reasonable conversation about it. Every elected official representing every one of the cities I mentioned, and every state legislator representing the cities I've mentioned is in support of our effort, and so far at the legislature we've enjoyed the cooperation of each committee we've sat in. Madam Chair, and I want to thank you for your work on this matter as well.
We have one question, and then I think that we have another testifier that wishes to speak to this bill. So Representative Johnson, or did you want to wait until the other testifier? Okay. So anyone else that wishes to speak to this bill, please come forward. Please state your name for the record and who you represent.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Brian Sweeney with BNSF Railway Company in St. Paul. I'm here in opposition to this bill. Few misstatements of fact apparently about what's the traffic flow would be and so on. In a nutshell, as was well documented last year, there were a number of service issues on the rail system, particularly BNSF Railway in Minnesota and throughout the upper Midwest. Last September, there was a joint hearing of 5 committees of the Minnesota legislature to deal strictly with the subject of rail service issues. It was made very clear that the capacity in the track system was not sufficient for the growth in traffic, and that the state, the Surface Transportation Board, and our customers expected us to do something about it. At that point, we outlined that we had several projects in the works for Minnesota and Wisconsin, the upper Midwest, that would increase our capacity. One of the projects that we put on our list this year was this Crystal Connector. The reason that we're doing it is that there is a large bottleneck. One of the biggest bottlenecks on our system is in Minneapolis. It's where CP trains transition onto BNSF tracks. Currently, about 24 trains a day, I think, operate on that CP track through Crystal. Half of those go to Shoreham Yard. The other half go to CP's yard in St. Paul. Their access to that yard is by trackage rights over BNSF Railway. At the point where those 12 trains a day, that's the current level, come onto our tracks, because of the limitations of the curvature and so on, they're limited to speeds of under 10 miles an hour. So while they're making that move, they block our north-south main lines for more than 20 minutes at a time. Total of about 4 hours a day that our tracks north and south are shut down. This causes backup of traffic in other locations. It brings everything to a halt. You've probably heard of the complaints in the northern suburbs extending up into Anoka County and beyond about block crossing issues there, trains parked, trains idling. This is a primary reason why. It's our trains waiting for the CP trains. So what we're looking to do is have a different interchange point where CP would come onto our track at Crystal, about 12 trains a day right now, as I said, at current levels. This has run into strong opposition, but the real problem is that right now we're under the gun. We've been told eliminate all the bottlenecks. This is one of the biggest ones. We're spending $6 billion this year on our capital program, about $325 million in Minnesota for track capacity and upgrades. What we're doing is leaving one of the biggest choke points in place if we can't build this particular project. We have said that we will look for options, but right now this is the only option we know of that works. If this is taken off the table, the implications go far beyond Hennepin County. It has ramifications for other counties in Minnesota, certainly for Anoka County, Ramsey County. It has implications for the entire state with the industries such as agriculture, mining, forest products, power generation that rely on the efficient flow of traffic through the Twin Cities area. So this is far bigger than a one-county situation, and to give one county veto power over a project that has statewide and regional implications, I think would be bad policy. Thank you.
All right, and Commissioner, did you want to respond at all?
Well, Madam Chair and members, I think this is part of the frustration we have. This committee has been this committee has been a stop for this bill for a long time. This is I don't know how many numbers of hearings we've had. I've testified that this is my third, I think. The BN representative is here. There are no maps before you. There is no plan before you. There's a tell of a $6 billion spend. This isn't even roughly approaching 1/1000th of that, and there's no, and yet this is the biggest choke point. So you can, I think, as elected officials, you can understand our frustration at the local level when you talk about cutting a suburb in two with more than mile-long trains, and the railroad comes here with virtually no information. So, you know, at the start of the testimony, it was suggested I made misstatements. I'd be happy to make whatever statements that were backed up by facts that the railroad provided, but there frankly haven't been any. So in my conversations with Burlington Northern officials, I've had just a couple at the Fort Worth, Texas level, where the management lies. It was suggested to me that there are other options. This is not the only other option. I think the railroad should pursue those.
All right, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Policy question first. I represent part of the city of St. Paul, and we've had difficulties dealing with the railroad, and they always seem to come through on top. My question is does this legislation, is it strong enough so it's going to be able to accomplish what you want, or do you see further litigation on this kind of legislation?
Commissioner?
Well, Madam Chair, Representative Johnson, I would hope it is strong enough. It would clarify state law very clearly, where if the government owned a piece of land that our public safety interests, it's written narrowly around public safety. It just isn't any sort of capricious purchase of land by government. We have to have a designated reason, and so we think it's the best we can do right now. But I certainly appreciate the question and the concern going forward.
Representative Johnson?
Then one question for you, Madam Chair, if I may. Where's the motion for this to go?
It's going to go to the General Register.
Good. Well, good luck.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right. Seeing none, I renew my motion that House File 1467 be referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you. Members, we are going to go to Representative Dettmer's bill. Representative Howe has agreed to present it because Representative Dettmer right now is currently presenting a different bill in another committee. For our schedule, some of these items will not be coming to us until later on this afternoon, so that's why we have to come back and do an evening hearing. So my apologies for that. It's just a reality of the timing of things. So we're going to do Dettmer's bill, and then we are going to do Representative Sanders' bill, and then, and you said we could do this one too. Okay. All right. With that, Representative Howe, if you could introduce House File 146, and I believe that we are sending this one to the General Register.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I will move House File 146 to go to the General Register.
Thank you. And Representative, how can you give us a little background on the bill?
Members, I think we've probably all seen this bill at least once before, and this actually just gives us the flexibility of honoring those that have fallen in service to our country, and given us the option to give them the Honor and Remembrance flag. And the Honor and Remembrance flag does not replace anything that we currently do, does not supplant anything that's current, but it gives us another option and another way to provide some significant piece of a way to honor these folks that have given all in the service of our country and especially from our state. So in that regard, I'd like to turn to my testifier and phone a friend here to help me give some more background on this specific piece of legislation.
Welcome. Please state your name for the record and who you represent.
Sure. My name is Pat LaBelle, and I am on the board of the Minnesota chapter of Honor and Remember. I thank you for hearing us today. In the way of a little background of the flag, my husband and I met Gold Star father George Lutz at a National Patriot Guard rally in Ogden, Utah in the summer of 2009. His son, Tony, had died in the Battle of Fallujah, 12/29/05. George visited with many Gold Star families after the funeral and found that all families had two things in common. Number one, they wanted to know their sacrifice was not in vain, and two, the nation wouldn't forget their fallen heroes. George did a lot of research and talked with legislators in Virginia and found there's never been a universal symbol dedicated to those who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our country. The legislators said go for it, and the Honor and Remember flag was born. George spent a year designing the Honor and Remember flag. In your handout, there's a short sheet explaining what all the symbolism, the colors and the symbols mean. So I'd like to refer to that. The Honor and Remember flag recognizes all individuals who died as a result of serving in the U.S. military from the founding of our nation to present day. It serves as a symbol of national gratitude and remembrance for Americans who paid for our freedoms with their lives. There's a very small group, 8 or 9 individuals, that disagree with this flag in Minnesota. One reason is that this flag has a trademark on it. Annan Flag Company was the first major flag company to be allowed to make the flag. Several other flag companies have also been granted the trademark. The reason for the trademark is lessons learned from the POW MIA flag. It was not protected by trademark, and because of that, not only did the design fluctuate, but it's made all over the world, including China and Vietnam. The trademark for Honor and Remember is not held in anyone's name, and anyone or everyone involved in design have legally released all rights. It is of utmost importance to protect the symbol and inhibit it from being altered or produced outside of the United States. Another objection by this group is that the Honor and Remember flag will replace the American flag on caskets. This is absolutely not true at all. It's ridiculous. I have 2 articles that were put in the Minnesota Legionnaire newsletter stating these false claims, and unfortunately this went out to everyone who's a Legion member in Minnesota. Included in your packet of information are frequently asked questions on the flag and the organization, a letter from the Vice President of Annan Flag Company addressing the issues brought forth by the aforementioned group of individuals, flag etiquette, where it goes on the pole, and a press release from this past November awarding Honor and Remember with the prestigious top-rated 2014 nonprofit award. To date, 21 states have, we just got Florida on Tuesday, have adopted the Honor and Remember flag, including neighboring Wisconsin and South Dakota. 5 other states have endorsed the flag, and legislation is pending in about 20 others. We do expect additional states to adopt the flag this legislative session. It only took about 3 weeks for Wisconsin to act on adopting the flag last year, and the regional commander for the American Legion and state commander of the VFW were there to help push the bill through. I hope you can see this. It's a picture of a flag presentation at the Apple Valley American Legion on April 22nd, 2012. We had 17 families in this presentation. We flew in George Lutz from Virginia to speak, and Governor Dayton also made an appearance and spoke to the families and the guests. As you can see, the Gold Star families get special hand-sewn flags, with the name of the fallen hero, the date of death, and the theater in which they died. Donations are used for these very special flags, and our most generous donors have been individual American Legions and VFWs. These same organizations also were proud to participate in many of the flag presentations, using their facilities and their honor guard in most cases. I just want to let you know the flag prices are a 3x5 is $50. That's what most places would fly. 4x6 is $79, and the only 5x8 that would probably be flown is at the Capitol, and that's under $200. I have a 5x8 that I would donate back to the state gladly. Governor Plenty flew it over the Capitol on July 22nd, 2010, when George Lutz was making his rounds to educate on the flag. Now is the time to vote on this bill with your hearts and minds and join the other 26 states in the union that have already adopted or endorsed the Honor and Remember flag. Please let these families know their heroes will forever be honored and remembered when they see this flag flying throughout the state of Minnesota. And it's also a huge reminder for all of the public that our freedom and homeland safety does not come without a price. I would just like to tell you a quick story about one of our flag presentations early on when our chapter was being formed in Minnesota. The Northeast Lions organization wanted to honor one of their neighborhood fallen heroes, Private First Class Marlon Troxel. The family wanted this flag to be a surprise for their mother, and I'm not real big on surprises for this, but we do as the family wishes. They had a fundraiser at Elsie's in Northeast Minneapolis, and there was a very large crowd there. The mother wasn't going to come because sitting in a bowling alley on a sunny Saturday afternoon for an 80-plus woman is probably not very appealing, but they finally got her to come. And when we presented the flag, I will never, ever forget this. She came up and touched my arm, and she looked up at me and with tears in her eyes and said, "I thought everybody forgot but me." And ladies and gentlemen, that's what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this bill? If so, if you can come forward, please. If you can please state your name, and anyone else that wishes to speak to the bill, feel free to please come forward and sit in the chairs back there. And if you can state your name for the record and who you represent.
My name is Tracy Clark. I'm a Gold Star mom. Good morning. We're happy to be here to honor our fallen heroes and to give and to all the Gold Star families. Our son was killed by a rocket-propelled grenade. He was doing his job, leading soldiers to their base, keeping them safe, and hoping by doing his job, he would be keeping us safe back home. Ryan was KIA'd October 4, 2010 in Shekabek, Afghanistan. And like every Gold Star family, Ryan and their loved ones are very missed, not only on special days, but every day. Our memories may fade, even for a mother and a father who have lost a child, and it frightens me. But the flag reminds everyone of the men and women who lost their lives from the beginning of all wars to the present time. Something to think about. Where would we be without our military men and women? Where would we be? When it comes time to say yes or no for flying the Honor and Remembrance flag, please remember what our loved ones did for our country and for our freedom. Remember before you say yes and no. Think about who you're saying no to. All we want is for people to never forget our fallen heroes. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your son's service. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this bill? If you can please state your name for the record and who you represent.
My name is Valerie Kennedy. I'm a Gold Star parent. I'd like to thank the committee today for your time and consideration. Our lives changed on April 15, 2011, when an Army chaplain and a notification officer knocked on our front door. They didn't need to speak the words, we knew. On behalf of a grateful nation, we regret to inform you that your son, Joseph Allen Kennedy, has been killed in the line of duty in Ghazni Province, Afghanistan. You have our deepest condolences. So began our journey, a journey that has repeated itself over the course of history. The true cost of freedom is buried in the ground. How to Honor a Fallen Man by Ron Noden. To honor a fallen man, you cannot fall yourself. You hold fast and steady. You finish the task at hand. You become more than you thought you ever could, and you do more than you ever dreamed you would. To honor a fallen man, you embrace that man in your soul. You make that man a part of who you are and what you do. You relinquish no quarter in the fight for what is right, and you champion those that carry on his work. To honor a fallen man is painful, difficult, and challenging. To honor a fallen man is the greatest honor you can give him. As you honor his memory, you perpetuate his existence, and you relish the bond with that man to keep his memory vibrant. To honor a fallen man, you progress in the process of honoring him. To honor him, you eventually move past grieving for him, and you reach a moment of change to pride, joy, and optimism. And as you heal, you find ways to help others heal. This poem became very poignant in our lives, and it was a turning point for us. Part of our healing journey also began with the Honor and Remember organization on April 9th of 2012, when we represented the personalized flag that you see here today. We have publicly flown this very special flag in Inver Grove here on April 15th to honor and remember Joe's service and sacrifice. This great republic in which we live has been built on the blood, sweat, and tears shed by brave men and women throughout its history. This flag represents the many lives that have served and paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. We are proud of Joe and his contribution to our country. The Honor and Remember flag is a distinctive symbol to remind the general public of the true cost of freedom. I ask each of you here today to pass this bill in support of those that gave their lives in service. And in doing so, you reassure the many Gold Star families across the nation that their loved one will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this bill? Welcome. If you can please state your name for the record and who you represent.
Madam Chair and Committee, my name is Ron McAdance. I'm from out by Candy High, Minnesota. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I've been working with Pat and Mike LaBelle on this Honor Remember flag for going on, 4 years? So anyway, I'm down here to testify in support of this flag. I've had the privilege of presenting these flags in Minnesota, South Dakota, and also in Arizona. When we give one of these flags to a Gold Star family, I don't know what more we can possibly give to show that family that their loved one will never be forgotten. And to be able to be a part of that is very meaningful for me. I've got I wrote up some notes here so that I could get out to everything I wanted to today, so if you will bear with me, I'll go over that. While there still remains an attitude among some members of the area that they are in a position to do what's best for the veterans of our great state, I come before you as a twice wounded combat veteran of the Vietnam War to tell you that those groups in no way speak for me. I'm a life member of the Society of the 1st Infantry Division, life member of the Disabled American Veterans, life member of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, and the Bandito Charlie Association, which was the company I served with in Vietnam. I'm also a member of the VFW, the American Legion, the 40 and 8, and have been honored with being a distinguished member of the 16th Infantry Regiment. I'm very active in working with veterans and veterans issues wherever I can help. There have been claims that we are trying to replace the Stars and Stripes with this new flag. As Pat said, nothing can be further from the truth. We all fought and served under Old Glory. That is a flag that represents each and every one of us as Americans. What if people in Minnesota would have stood up and said, we don't need a state flag, Old Glory is our flag? What if our military units were to say, what do we need a unit flag for? We have Old Glory. If Congress would have turned down the MIA POW flag and said that all of our MIA POWs were represented by Old Glory, which they are, the MIA POW flag would never proudly fly over our government buildings. It did, in fact, take many years for the POW MIA flag to be passed through. All of our flags represent a group of people. Old Glory, of course, represents all of us as Americans. Our state flag represents each and every one of us as citizens of Minnesota. The unit flags represent individual units of our military. Professional sports teams even have flags for their teams. You might say that these flags represent special interest groups. What it boils down to is that we all have special interests, and we're all parts of a special interest group of our own. The Honor and Remember flag represents a very special group. It represents all of the men and women who have shed their blood on foreign soil and gave their lives so that you and I may enjoy the freedoms we hold so dear. For the families of these young men and women, the Honor and Remember flag is one more symbol of the appreciation for the sacrifice that has been made by their loved one. We are not asking for any funding. We are not asking for any mandates. All we are asking the state of Minnesota for is to join the 26 other states who have recognized the Honor and Remember flag and now allow it to be flown over our state capitol buildings and other government buildings on 12 days out of the year, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and so on. It may be flown every day if so desired. I feel that to not approve this flag would be a slap in the face to the families of our fallen youth who have given their all. I urge you to pass this bill, HF 146, and move it on to the House floor. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions of me? I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Welcome. If you can please state your name for your record.
My name is Mike McDonald. Madam Chair and members, my comments are going to be very brief, as they've already covered some of the information that I had previously prepared. I am a Vietnam combat veteran, life member of the DAV, VVA, VFW, 28th Infantry Regimental President, and life member of the 1st Infantry Division. Quite frankly, I've been a little bit confused in why this is considered a veteran issue at all. I think it is an issue for the entire American public. I don't think that legislatures across the country that have considered this a veteran issue, I think that that assumption is invalid. Veterans have no corner on the market of grief, loss, or sacrifice. This flag should have been around since America's earliest wars. It is simply a special recognition for the families who have sacrificed the most and a public reminder of the cost of freedom borne by those families. Conversely, it could also be considered an anti-war symbol because it suggests a rethinking of the sacrifices we ask our soldiers and their families to make. I am proud that our representatives have understood the need for this powerful symbol. We cannot recognize the special significance of our falling if we have failed in expecting, if we cannot recognize the special significance of our falling, we have failed in expecting any future family's willingness to send a son or daughter into harm's way. And lastly, again, this flag is in no way designed to replace, used in place of, or conflict with the Stars and Stripes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this bill? Please state your name for the record and who you represent.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the committee members. Most of you have seen me at almost any veteran issue down here at the Capitol, and I agree with the gentleman in front of me. This shouldn't be a veteran issue. This should be an issue for everybody. I'm chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council of Minnesota, and our council unanimously voted to endorse this flag. I have Old Glory at home and a nice oak case sitting next to my TV that was given to me from my father. I couldn't imagine losing my son and him not being recognized. So I ask you to please pass this forward. Thank you.
Great. All right, members, are there any questions at all? Representative Nash.
Madam Chair, thank you to the Gold Star families. Thank you for your sacrifice. And members, let's pass this out and get it on the floor.
Is there any other questions? Representative Earhart.
I was late, Madam Chair, and I apologize, but who designed this flag and why is it? Is there some specific, or was it a contest, or?
Sure. And if
Pat LaBelle.
Straight ahead. Go ahead.
The flag was designed by a Gold Star father who lost his son in the Battle of Fallujah. And it took him about a year to put it together just right. Everything has a meaning on it.
Representative Earhart, in your packet is description of the symbolism of the flag. And if you need a copy, I can give you mine. Any further follow-up, Representative Earhart?
Well, some of you know that I'm a veteran, a combat veteran, and sometimes I think we do things that, here we go. Because of that there's a lot of emotion involved in this. I, for one, don't particularly care for the design of that flag, but that's just a personal opinion. And I suppose it could be anything that, any kind of design that has on it the name of someone who passed because of combat service, but I just don't think it's a very good looking flag. I'm sorry. I understand it could be any kind of a flag as long as it does this, but and do I understand that we're now adopting this as the state's entry into this with, was I hear 27 other states have done this or something like that?
Yes, Representative Earhart.
You know, Madam Chair, when we were trying to do something about the state flag, which needs designing, we had a couple of times I carried that bill because it could use a little more pep in it than it is. And we had batteries of people doing the design work on it. We never did change it. Now we're expecting to adopt this. I don't know if I'm not an artist, but it doesn't catch my eye very much. But
okay.
Whatever.
Thank you for your feedback, Representative Lunan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Representative Earhart, a year from now, maybe none of us in here will remember what the flag looked like, or 10 years from now. But I, for one, and I'm assuming many others in here also will remember what the flag represents, which is the intent of any banner, whether military or otherwise. You're trying to make about the fourth thing the first thing.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair,
Representative Earhart.
We do have that black and white MIA flag that everybody recognizes because it was put forth in the correct manner. And I think that's maybe even accepted by the federal government as part of the symbolic of the mission in action.
Okay.
And I don't know what,
Okay.
Has anybody in this group ever heard about this before we walked in here, was it today?
Well, Representative Earhart, it was heard in the Veterans Division, so yes.
Excuse me?
It was, I'm sorry, Representative Earhart. It was heard in the Veterans Division, so yes.
Madam Chair.
And Representative Howe.
This has been here at the legislature a couple of years. So this is not the first year this has come forward. We've heard this numerous times in numerous years. And so it's not the first run at this. I hope it's the last. I hope this is what we need to do and get it done. I see the author of the bill walked in now. And if he wants to say a few words, I would definitely turn the gavel over to him, or the podium over here for this. But Madam Chair, I guess what I want to emphasize here is I'm probably
Well, thank you,
I
Representative.
hate to say it, but this is, and I get on folks for being too emotional and doing things on emotion. You should do it on fact. And I believe the fact is we can't do enough to honor these folks that do this. And it strikes me because I had to make the toughest thing I ever had to do in my life.
You know, we are very blessed here at the legislature. We have many members that have served both in combat and just in our military in general, and we thank them all for their service. And so, Representative Dettmer, you arrived just at the right moment. We are going to vote on this bill. It's House File 146. Representative Howe renews his motion that House File 146 be referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Congratulations, Representative Dettmer. Your bill is moving to the General Register.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
Representative Sanders.
Was that in your packet? I got the other one. This is our...
Welcome, Representative Sanders. I'm going to move House File 337 be referred to the General Register. With that, if you could introduce your bill and walk us through it, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. House File 337 is the Campaign Finance Board's technical bill. With me here today is Mr. Goldsmith from the Campaign Finance Board to help us walk through the bill or answer any questions that we have, as he is the expert on all this stuff.
Mr. Goldsmith.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Gary Goldsmith. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board. Rather than go through the entire bill, I will start with the provisions that have some financial implications. Members of the committee, there is no fiscal note on this bill, and there is no recognizable fiscal impact, which is the reason there's no fiscal note. This bill does sort of routine things, non-controversial things that the board's technical / non-controversial bill typically does each year. And in some cases, those things will result in some savings because we become more efficient in administration. In some cases, they'll actually result in savings, we hope, because they make the law more clear, and thus there'll be fewer violations and fewer questions about it. There are a few provisions that have actual financial implications in the bill, but those all relate to late filing fees and civil penalties. And historically, the agency has never budgeted, and MMB agrees with this position, that we do not budget for late filing fees or civil penalties in the board's operations. Those monies are always deposited in the general fund of the state. That's a statutory requirement in Chapter 10A. And they are so unpredictable that any guess that we would make would likely be far from the mark. Some years they can be high. For example, after the 2012 election, we had one investigation where there was a $100,000 civil penalty. That's very rare, happens once every 10 or 12 or 15 years. Typically, they're fairly small. Also, if we were doing our job perfectly in educating treasurers and candidates and PACs the way we would like to, there wouldn't be any late filing fees or civil penalties. So our goal is always to reduce these amounts. But let me just touch on the sections of the bill that do deal with financial matters. And the first one would be Section 5 of the bill. And there are three sections that are similar to this. This is a section that relates to the requirement that a public official who represents someone else for money before a state agency has to file a notice with the board of that representation disclosure. And the late filing fee for failing to do that is $5 a day. This provision would increase that to $25 a day with a maximum of $1,000. Over the last several years, the legislature has been addressing all of these late filing fees in the same way, increasing them to $25 per day with a maximum of $1,000. So this does the same thing to make this provision consistent with most of the others, including the requirement that you file campaign finance reports. It would now be the same level of penalty as your campaign finance report filing. The next section is Section 10, which is, again, a late filing fee increase. This is the requirement that a political committee or fund register with the board within 14 days after meeting the financial thresholds for registration. And again, the increase would be from $5 to $25 per day with a maximum of $1,000. Moving on to section, clear up on page 16, section 19 of the bill. This adds a new civil penalty, and actually, in our estimation, it provides a less stringent remedy than the remedy that's there now. Under current law, if a candidate who did not sign a public subsidy agreement issues a PCR receipt so that the donor can get the money back, the candidate who doesn't sign a public subsidy agreement is not supposed to do that. And under current law, that's a crime. It's a misdemeanor. And that's the only penalty. This would add a civil penalty of up to $3,000 that could be imposed by the board. And that's the typical level of civil penalty that the other provisions of Chapter 10A permit, up to $3,000. It also does add one additional prohibition, and that is, even if you did sign a public subsidy agreement, if you issue a receipt to somebody who's not qualified to get one, for example, somebody who didn't give you any money, that would be also a misdemeanor and subject to a civil penalty. Issuing these receipts is really just like giving out money, essentially, because the recipient of the receipt can file that with the Department of Revenue and get $50 back or $100 back for a couple filing jointly. The next section is the one right below that, which is Section 20. This is a new penalty, and this relates to Chapter 211B. A couple of years ago, the legislature gave the board jurisdiction over certain provisions of the Fair Campaign Practices Act, but only as they relate to candidates, party units, and PACs over which we already have jurisdiction. And those provisions were how you can use money that you raise for political purposes, the corporate contribution prohibition, and the prepared and paid for disclaimer, so that now you have somebody that you can ask questions about if you want some clarification on those laws. When those matters were heard only by the OAH and still by the OAH for local candidates, the OAH has a blanket statute that allows them to issue $5,000 civil penalties. The board doesn't have any blanket civil penalty authority. If you want us to have civil penalty authority, it goes in each separate provision. So this provision would allow the board to issue civil penalties of up to $3,000 for those sections in 211B that don't already include their own civil penalty provision. As I was going through that, I realized I did miss one other late filing fee increase. There were actually three in the bill, and if a member wants me to identify the third one, I'll go back and find it. But there were three of those where the late filing fee is increased from $5 to $25. And then finally, I want to point out one provision that looks like it has a financial implication, but it does not. And if you turn to page 20, section 28, costs assessed, you'll see that provision. This is an amendment to Section 211B.37, and that's a statute that's not actually under the board's jurisdiction. But I'll give you just a very brief background on why this was there and why it needs to be changed. Quite a long time ago, the Office of Administrative Hearings, and still in most cases, hears complaints under Chapter 211B, which is the Fair Campaign Practices Act. Prior to the OAH getting jurisdiction over that chapter, county attorneys were required to handle complaints, and both at the state election level and at the local level. And county attorneys found that burdensome. They didn't want to do it. And a law was passed to put that authority and responsibility with the Office of Administrative Hearings. At that time, of course, there was no money, the OAH being a revolving fund agency, and so the statute was written so that for complaints regarding state candidates, those under the board's jurisdiction, $130,000 per biennium was set aside from the public subsidy appropriation to be transferred to the OAH, and they would bill against that for those complaints. And at that time, the counties were billed back individually for local candidate complaints, and so OAH was covered for all of their costs. Some years subsequently, actually in 2009, both the board and the OAH realized that this idea of setting aside $130,000 from the public subsidy program that OAH would bill against didn't make a lot of sense. And in that biennium, so for 10-11, the money was directly appropriated to OAH. So if you look at those budgets, you'll see $130,000 appropriation directly to OAH. And at the same time, the direct appropriation for the public subsidy was reduced by that amount, so there was no fiscal impact. There was a rider that was still included that said if there was any money left over, it went back to the public subsidy program. And during the first biennium there was, but subsequent to that there hasn't been any money left over. Part of the reason that there has been no money left over is because a couple of years later the counties were successful in getting the statute amended to eliminate the charge back to counties for local elections. And Section 211B.37 then read as you see it in the bill, but without the changes. What that actually meant, and I don't know if anybody really recognized it at the time, but that by that point the OAH still had the $130,000, but was then required to handle not only the state complaints, which was taking up all of that money, but also local complaints, and there was no new funding provided. And that's why you've seen in the last couple of years, including the last couple of bienniums, including this one, that the OAH runs a deficit and has to come in for a deficiency appropriation because there's actually no real funding provided for local complaints. This bill does only one thing, and that is it deletes the obsolete language that was left at the time we moved the appropriation directly to OAH. We should have removed the language that's told OAH to assess the cost of state complaints back to the public subsidy program. They haven't been doing that since 2009, so we're in the third biennium now where that has not been done. And I've met with Judge Proust. She understands this language and, of course, has no intention of trying to charge public subsidy program for complaints for which they're now directly funded. So this simply removes obsolete language, does not change how the funding or the billing has worked for the last three bienniums. And that concludes the provisions that have financial implications, Madam Chair, and I'll stand for questions on any part of the bill.
First, is there anyone that wishes to speak to this bill from the public? Okay. Representative Carlson.
Madam Chair, I'm looking at sections 4 and 5 of the bill where you eliminate the 10-day grace period. And I've probably filed as many reports as anybody here, and I've never been late. But first of all, I'd be interested in knowing why why we originally had a 10-day grace period, and what would be some of the circumstances that might lead to somebody filing late. Illness out of the country might be a couple of examples where someone might, for some reason or another, file late. And so I think it's important to know why we gave a grace period, whatever the number of days, and then secondly, how often and why does someone file late?
Mr. Goldsmith.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Carlson. That's a good question. I can't exactly answer the first part as to why there was a grace period in the first place, because these filings are not required the moment something happens. There's always a built-in period before the filing is even required. So, for example, registration of a political committee or fund is not required until 14 days after the threshold has been met. The notice of representation is not required. I believe that's 14 days. It might be 10 days after the representation has occurred. And then the late filing fee doesn't occur until, under previous law, until an additional grace period, usually 10 days after that. And I cannot tell you why that was. What I can tell you in particular is our experience, and it was most prominent in the lobbyist disclosure filing requirement. Before the so-called grace period was eliminated, a very high percentage of lobbyists were technically late in filing. They were supposed to file within, by a certain filing date, a date specific in the statute. And they didn't, but almost all lobbyists filed before the late filing fee kicked in. So we had something like, I believe, in excess of 90% didn't file by the technical due date, but well over 90% filed before the late filing fee occurred. Now that there is no grace period, more than 90% of lobbyists filed by the due date. So it was a matter of changing their approach. So again, I cannot tell you why the original grace period was involved. I will tell you that the board does have the ability and regularly waives late filing fees for cases of illness, family problems, and often will even reduce a fee just because a person didn't understand the requirements. So the board does have flexibility in those cases where it's appropriate to make an adjustment.
No, Madam Chair, the reason I asked the question, you know, I always look at things like this so that we don't have any unintended consequences, and so maybe your last statement covers that if you have the authority then, if there were extenuating circumstances, to waive the penalty.
Mr. Goldsmith?
That satisfies my concern, Madam Chair.
Okay. Members, any other questions? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the author on Section 27, I've heard a little bit about that. Could you explain what the rationale is for that and what your intent is as far as the new language?
Representative Johnson, can you say the section again that you're referring to?
Section 27.
Okay.
The new language, 19.27.
Okay. Mr. Goldsmith?
Page 19. Madam Chair, I'm going to defer to the author on this. This section and a similar section in the definition of contribution were amendments in the first policy committee of the bill, and the board worked with the authors of the amendments to make sure that we understood what was intended and we would be able to administer the law, but the board did not have a position on the actual substance of the amendments.
Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and that's exactly what I was trying to get at. I just wanted to know what the intent was. I know it's a policy question, but I would appreciate, since the bill is before us, kind of hear what the rationale is.
Madam Chair and Representative Johnson.
Sanders, excuse me.
So the intent, I believe, from the author of the amendment in the Elections Committee and some discussion before that was that there was some clarification needed around signage. For instance, would it be okay to place a yard sign on a family farm if it was incorporated? You know, would that be a corporate contribution or not? And so in working with the board, we tried to come up with some language to hopefully provide some clarifying language. Similarly, even though it was a residence, if it was an advertised daycare, you know, the business, you know, they were an attorney or a tax preparer but worked out of their home, were there any issues about placing a yard sign there? So the intent is just to provide some clarifying language as to, what is and isn't okay regarding signage and whether or not there would be corporate contributions included or not. To that point, this bill is designed to be hopefully 100% non-controversial. If there's problems with any of that language, we certainly can pull it out or make it better. We don't want anything to be non-controversial or things that we can't hopefully get almost 100% behind. So if there are problems or clarifications needed, we're certainly happy to take care of those.
Representative Johnson?
No, thank you. That's what I was wondering if it was an attempt to make things more clear and less controversial. That sounds like that's what your intent is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That is the intent, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Goldsmith?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Johnson and members. I did want to just explain how the board understands the two corresponding provisions to work. The first provision is actually on page 2 at line 2.9, which clarifies the definition of contribution, and it states that it is not a contribution for an individual to give permission to a candidate to put up a sign on any real property that is a residence. So that would permit then signs on even a corporately owned residential property. And then the provisions that Representative Johnson was talking about provide a corresponding release from the corporation that might own the property. And they do one additional thing, and that is that to provide that a corporation that is not a residential property, in other words, just a business in town, for example, would be permitted to put up one sign per candidate, not to exceed the limit specified, which I believe is 18 by 24, which I've been told by printers is the standard small sign. That is new, and that would not be recognized as a contribution either for the corporate contribution prohibition provision or for reporting purposes.
It's on that piece that Representative Sanders, in greater Minnesota, if it's a farm like you're highlighting, it'd probably be better to not limit the size of the sign on that, given, I mean, you're on a farm place, I think that that's kind of problematic. So that's my concern there. Representative Johnson, any further comments?
Just briefly, Mr. Goldsmith, then, on a business, then, would you be limited to one sign? So I see businesses, on both parties plastered sometimes with 5 or 6 signs. Is that the intent of that?
Mr. Goldsmith.
Madam Chair, Representative Johnson, and first let me back up to the Chair's concern. There is no limit on signs on residential type properties. So on a farm, they can put up the 4 by 8 foot billboard if they want to, whatever they prefer. The limit on signs is only for actual commercial property that is non-residential. And there are two approaches, or two answers really to your question, Representative Johnson. One is that in coordination with the candidate, so if the candidate comes to the business and says, I want to put up a sign and I'm not going to pay for it, I just want you to do it, they would be limited to one sign per candidate and the size that's specified. Now, even under existing law, a candidate could come to a business and say, I want to put up a big sign and I'm going to pay the fair market value, taking it out of being a contribution, and that would still be permitted.
Well, Mr. Goldsmith, even limiting it on the commercial side of it, there's some candidates that don't purchase an 18 by 24 size sign, so you're going to be making them go out and buy a specific sign. So the size part of it, I think, is problematic, but I'm going to let that go. We have Representative Mark Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Goldsmith, maybe you can help me out with something here. On your section regarding the violations and enforcement, you got section 4, failure to file, subdivision 1, disclosure requirements, section 10, failure to file and penalties. First part of my question is, I see that these penalties, the daily rate is going up from $5 to $25. That's pretty significant. And the other fee is going from $100 to $1,000. That's pretty significant too. My question is, why is there a need for these rates to go, or these fees to go up? And my second question is, are there a lot of people out there that are violating these sections?
Mr. Goldsmith.
Madam Chair, Representative, first of all, the board's experience in the past, at least, with provisions that were more often used than these are not often used, has been that there seemed to be a tendency for people to consider a $5 per day fee capped at $100 to be insignificant enough not to actually worry about the requirement. And since that's the only, other than the law existing itself, the incentive to meet the requirement is the financial penalty, that has become insignificant over the years. The statute has been in place for certainly more than 20 years, and I can't go back beyond that at the same level. So the board the legislature's already increased those penalties in many other areas, and we felt that it was appropriate to bring these up to a point where they would have some meaning. Keep in mind that these are not things that are going to be imposed particularly on unsuspecting citizens. They relate to three different things. One is a public official representing somebody before a state agency for a fee. Another is a lobbyist who is required to register. And the third one is a political committee or fund required to register. So typically these are not citizens just going about their business, but they're people in a unique way becoming involved in government. And so that's the basis for the recommendation.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that's always bothered me is when government benefits financially from other people's misfortunes. That being said, I would assume that if you really wanted to give somebody a reason not to violate any of these things, why stop at $1,000? Why not, again, $5,000, $10,000? That being said, I'm going to change the subject. I'm noticing here in Section 11, that I find this very fascinating. That to me, this is common sense in life. We've got something in here down in paragraph, there's a 932 about skywriting. Do we really need stuff like this in here? I know it's there. It's got a reason, but and there's also more language in here. Other means of displaying and advertising. Does that mean that tagging railroad cards, this type of stuff, this type of behavior? I'm just kind of fascinated for this stuff to even be in a bill. It's there. I acknowledge it, but skywriting is actually in a bill.
Representative Sanders.
Well, Madam Chair, I get that. Mr. Goldsmith can certainly comment, but this section is saying that the disclaimers do not apply to these. So, Representative Anderson, when you are skywriting, I think you're one of the most uniquely qualified people to be able to do that in the legislature right now. But when you're skywriting your campaign banner or your name above your district, so you don't have to have a disclaimer underneath that.
Representative
I think it's a unique provision for Representative Anderson.
Well, Madam Chair, I wasn't really going to go there. I'd have to make some pretty big letters up there. But, again, just the fact that there was or there would even have to be a disclaimer in the first place. I guess that's where I was going with this. And there's so many different things, and it's going to be covered in the rest of that language, which says other means of displaying an advertisement. Again, it comes back down to common sense.
Representative Kahn.
Well, I may be the only person who actually had an opponent do skywriting against me, and we never thought to think about the disclaimer one. I think it was his only expense in the campaign. Did it over a U of M football game.
Go big or go home. Representative Kahn, any other?
And I got reelected anyway.
You did.
Representative Earhart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, if this is something that maybe was addressed, and I'm not sure of it, but if I do not take public funding and I raise my total amount in the first year, which is now 62 plus, I guess, I blow through the level of that releases my opponent from who may have signed up for public funding in the first year. rather than whatever under current law, it's sometime in July or August or wherever, when you reach the threshold at which it releases your opponent. Now, has that been fixed in this, or how are we handling that? I know that I talked to Mr. Goldsmith at one time about this, and he said there were some corrections that needed to be made. I'm not sure that they were, or he didn't talk about them. So.
Mr. Goldsmith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Earhart. There weren't any, the only technical corrections to the provisions relating to release from public subsidy were a couple of word changes to make the language, make it clear that the same approach applies now that we're in a 2-year cycle that applied when we were in a individual year cycle. So it doesn't address any particular problem, but, and I'm not completely prepared to address that question today because there's nothing in the bill other than those technical changes. But the board's staff's analysis is that the law does work as written, and I'd be happy to have further conversations with you about it. And if there's something that seems not to work, we could look at that. But this bill, I think, will be ultimately, if it passes, will be going to conference committee because the bill is different in each body. And so if there's, I would like to talk to you further about that and see if we need to address something.
Thank you.
Representative Earhart.
No, but I think it's got to be addressed because it was a question in my race.
Okay. Representative Khan.
Yes, I have a question about the refund of the fine for the willful, it's the 16.4 in the bill. One of the things I can't, to an individual, is there any specifications about the individuals not eligible to claim a refund? For example, I guess it says a taxpayer. Is there a definition of taxpayer someplace? Or
Representative Khan, what section are you in the bill?
16.
Section.
I'm sorry, Section 19 in the bill.
Section 19. Okay, Mr.
Page
Goldsmith.
16.4. So, I mean, one of the things that is sometimes, and I think what I've done is I've written if eligible on the refund thing. I don't know if that means that one of the things that's bothered me sometimes is that the return address will not be a Minnesota State return address. But I just don't know if that's the check that, so I assume it's someone who may have residences in 2 states. And how is that covered? I tried to figure it out from the statute and I couldn't, so.
Mr. Goldsmith.
Madam Chair, Representative Khan, the eligibility requirement is actually in, I believe it's Chapter 291. It's a Department of Revenue statute, and it does refer to a taxpayer, not necessarily a person who actually has to owe and pay taxes, but a person who would be a taxpayer if they had the obligation. I don't think that this statute in 10A gets that deep because what it says is that the person issuing the receipt would have to know that the person is not eligible. So typically the case we're thinking about is the person didn't give you any money, or the person has no contact to Minnesota, but you would have to have actual knowledge that the person is not eligible before you would violate this provision.
Well,
Representative Khan.
Madam Chairman, I guess what I'm interested in what the connection to Minnesota has to be. I mean, what if the person is a foreign citizen or something like that? Does that kick into it in any way?
Mr. Goldsmith or Mr. Gehring is here to help us out.
Mr. Gehring is great.
Mr. Gehring.
Madam Chair, Representative Khan, one of the qualifications to be eligible for the refund program is that you have to be eligible to vote in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
And so if you don't qualify that way, then you wouldn't qualify for the refund.
Okay.
Representative Khan. And I think it's all listed on the blue form that, or whatever color form it is now. It's listed all the things that you have to go through or to be.
But I guess the question is, willful means you have to prove that you knew that. You're just getting a name and an address, and you don't have to go check their eligibility to vote, and you don't have to check, it's a felon or something, it's okay. I don't think I've gotten some recently, but I think I probably had some in the past, maybe before we had a refund.
So Madam Chair, Representative Khan, so willful means that you had knowledge that the person was not eligible and you gave them a form anyway. So it's not that you didn't go in and check their background, it's that you knew in advance that they weren't eligible and you decided to give them the form.
Okay, so if you just, Madam Chairman, if you just dumb and couldn't figure it out, it's not willful.
Mr. Garrett.
Madam Chair, Representative Khan, I think that's probably right, although Mr. Goldsmith probably should weigh in on that.
Mr. Goldsmith.
Madam Chair, it's the board's understanding that this does not impose any burden on the issuer of the receipt to check eligibility, but if they have this pre-existing knowledge and still issue a receipt, then it would be a violation.
Okay. Representative Howe to this point.
Madam Chair, I think the follow-up with Representative Khan answered my question, so that was great.
And Representative Carlson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was here when we passed a lot of this way back when and created the board and had a slightly different name. I think ethics or something was included in the title, and that didn't really fit. And later we passed legislation calling it the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board. And, I commented earlier in this meeting about unintended consequences and so on. And I just have to say, I think in some respects we're moving far beyond what the original intent, which was disclosure. And when we start having conversations about skywriting, I hadn't noticed that part of it until you brought it up. When we start talking about you can have one sign of a certain size on corporate property, I think that goes far beyond what the original intent of the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board was. And I would just hope that the board begins to kind of take a step back and say, now, what was our original purpose? And the reason I bring up some of that, when you make it too complex and you have too many rules and regulations, you have to keep in mind, at least in legislative races, and to some degree maybe even true in some of the other races, we're dealing with volunteers. You get it too complex and try to get a treasurer. I commented the other day, I've been very fortunate. I've had 2 treasurers in 43 years. I might have sleepless nights if I had to find another one. So my point is, and my advice is, kind of keep what the original intent was, keep it simple, because we don't want to put people in a position where they get caught up with a violation because there's something in here that deals with unintended consequences. Somebody that makes the mistake in a case that we reference corporate farms, and my gosh, happened to put up 2-yard signs for the same candidate on a farm, and they're in violation of the law. That's not the original intent as one that was here. Maybe Representative Khan was on the Government Operations Committee at the time. I think that's where the bill originally went through. And this, by the way, was part of the reform at kind of the height of Watergate. And so the feeling was, well, we have to have better laws for campaign disclosure. And that's where this all originated. And I'm all for that. It's just that I'm just saying, don't go too far to the point where we create situations with unintended consequences. And keep in mind, we're dealing with volunteers. And I compliment the board. They do provide training if you for your campaign managers and volunteers and so on. So they try to do the best they can. And maybe some of this doesn't come from the board. Maybe it comes from others that have proposed various legislation through the years. I'm not sure. But if you would care to respond, that's fine. I was doing it maybe mainly to comment on what I viewed as the original intent, and we always debate what legislative intent was, but I think everybody could agree that that was the original intent, and all you have to do is look at what the title of the board is.
Well, and the fees on that, Mr. Goldsmith, is one of the concerns that I have too, because it is just volunteers that are putting this together. And so I do have concerns about that. I have worked with the Campaign Finance Board for years, even prior to being a legislator myself. And I think that that's, the board has always said it's always about making sure that you comply. But I'm just curious on the fee end of it, based upon your knowledge of what your average fees are on a given election cycle, how much are we increasing that piece? And I know that you don't base your budget off of that, and I'm not implying that, but I do want to know, based on a traditional campaign year where both the House and the Senate are up, what can you expect the fee increase to be based upon these new numbers?
Madam Chair and members, the representation disclosure requirement is rarely used. Many years there are none. Occasionally there's one or two. I'm not sure if there's ever been a late filing fee. This is added in part for consistency with other fees in the statute, so that would typically be zero. When there is a representation disclosure statement, because it's filed by a public official, they often know about the statute and simply file the notice within the time frame that they're allowed to do that. The second fee provision that's increased here is lobbyist registration. And most people who are lobbyists, which means you have to be paid more than $3,000 in a year in total to be a lobbyist. I'm sorry, more than $3,000 in a year to be a lobbyist. Those people typically know that they are lobbyists and typically know the registration requirement. We have a handful, and again, I'm talking about 5 or less, typically each year, of lobbyists that don't register on time. Because once we become aware that they're lobbyists and let them know, they typically register right away. So there may be a fee, but typically we don't have any late lobbyist registrations. And finally, political committees and funds. Again, the number of political committees and funds that start to become active in Minnesota and then don't register on time is very, very minimal. So some years, some election cycles, it might be $0 in new fees, and some years it might be a few thousand, but that would be pretty unusual.
Okay. Members, I don't have anyone else on the list that has a question. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question on page 18, line 3. I just need some clarification under putting the disclaimer on. So this is material that is handed out by the candidate, nothing. The language formerly said sent by the candidate, but now it says distributed by the candidate, clearly distributed by the candidate. So does that mean it's me handing these out in an event?
Mr. Goldsmith.
Madam Chair, Representative, the purpose was to make the exception, and this is an exception, it's when the disclaimer is not required, to make the exception broader so that it wouldn't apply necessarily to things that were just mailed, which was what sent seems to imply. So it could be handed out at a parade or at an event. And Madam Chair, with your permission, I would like to address the scope of the disclaimer changes.
All right.
This is in part in response to Representative Carlson's questions. I'd like the committee to keep in mind that these changes to disclaimers, including skywriting and other things, these are all exceptions. They're all things that say you don't have to have a disclaimer in these cases. The way the statute reads right now and the way the board staff has to answer when asked is that technically you have to have a disclaimer on everything. A campaign button, a banner flown over a football field, which has happened, and skywriting. And so the board actually is recognizing that that probably was, in fact, an unintended consequence. It's not really possible or practical to put a disclaimer on everything. And a second unintended consequence is that the disclaimer requirement applies to everybody starting at $1 if you're distributing something in the 7 days before an election. There's an exception beyond that. But if the person on your block wants to distribute something within the week before the election, they would have to have a disclaimer on it. And so this bill also adds thresholds below which it doesn't apply to you at all. And those thresholds are the same as would apply to require you to register with a report to the board. So in a typical election involving candidates, it's a $750 threshold below which you don't have to even worry about disclaimers. So what we're doing is attempting to correct an overly broad statute to eliminate a lot of things that people wouldn't expect that they need a disclaimer on, and now the statute will say, yes, you don't have to have the disclaimer.
Representative Schultz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So distributed is more broad. It could be through the mail as well, and that's still clearly distributed by the candidate.
Mr. Goldsmith?
Madam Chair and Representative, that's correct, however they choose to distribute.
Thank you.
And Representative Carlson?
Yeah, Madam Chair, the skywriting thing just happened to come up, but I did reference, for example, the corporate property and one sign per candidate and all of that. In addition to saying unintended consequences, some of what I was referring to, and this happens in other state agencies as well, as we have to deal periodically with what we sometimes call mission creep. And when you go back to what the original legislative intent may have been, and then over time you have what we sometimes refer to as mission creep, and maybe that's a better way of putting what I was attempting to say when you look at when the law was first passed and where we are today. And there are other circumstances in state government where I could probably point that out as well. I had a bill one time dealing with nursing assistants, and the State Board of Nursing came back with so many rules and regulations that we had in the Health and Human Services bill a hearing, and we told them to go back to the drawing boards, that was not in any way, shape, or form what the legislative intent was. And I was on the committee, and I happened to have been the author of the bill. So sometimes you encounter over time these kinds of things, and and I don't know how the corporate thing even came forward, but like I say, if you've got a large piece of property and your volunteer who happens to be putting up signs for you, and I'm not in the countryside, so I don't have any farms, but if they happen to put up 2 signs, that's an unintended consequence, but it's also, in my view, an example of mission creep. But I'll just leave it there because we've got other bills on the agenda, and I just want to put up a red flag that let's be careful and keep in mind what the original intent of the board was.
Yes, yep, thank you. And Representative Sanders, closing comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'll just say, this language doesn't say that you can't put more than one sign. The board is saying that one small sign basically doesn't have value, and therefore you wouldn't have to report that sign. But what I will say is if members feel like those couple sections are more convoluted or less clear than current statute, I'm perfectly happy dropping that from the bill. In fact, if you wanted to make the motion in this committee, that would be fine with me as well. We certainly don't want anything in the bill to be unclear. I agree with your spirit, Representative Carlson, of making things simple and keeping things easier, because we do deal with volunteer treasurers and volunteers, and that's how it works at this level. So with that, Madam Chair, I mean, if folks have ideas on how to make the bill simpler, easier now, that's fine. Otherwise, happy to work with members, before we get to the floor to make sure that this is something that everyone can stand behind.
And Representative Sanders, I think we all appreciate the fact that you are carrying this for the Campaign Finance Board. You've done excellent work on it, and we appreciate your time for doing that too. So members, I don't have anyone else that has questions, so I would like to move to a vote on House File 337 going to the General Register. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Your bill goes to the General Register. Thank you,
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Okay. Members, what we're going to do is, as I mentioned earlier, we have some bills that will be coming to us this afternoon. We can't act on them yet because they're not within our possession. So we are going to recess until roughly 30 minutes after session, and we will come back here. Basement. We will be in the basement. I ask for the ease of staff that you take your bills that you have right now and stick them into your folder so that they don't have to do a whole rearrangement. So any of the bills that we haven't heard, please take them now, put them in your folder, and that way staff can just pick up the folders and they will be ready to go for this afternoon, 30 minutes after session. Any bills that we've already heard, you can just set those on the table and they'll have those recycled for you, and that will be taken care of. So with that, members, we are in recess until 30 minutes, approximately 30 minutes after session.